All right, guys. Well, I thought maybe we could just start for the record. Everyone could just say your name and your date of birth.
11/23/56.
Okay. And name.
Robert Stalsburg.
You had to think about that.
That's it.
Carol,
Done.
Linda, Bolster, Stalsburg, Rudowitz.
I love that.
March 15th, 1945.
Mary Catherine Stalsburg, July 31st, 1961, otherwise known as Kitty. Thank you to my brother. All right, guys. Well, we'd love to hear first, like, a little bit about your neighborhood and what that was like growing up in Deep River.
I already told you that.
You gotta say it.
It was considered the Stalsburg compound.
Oh, okay.
That when Grandpa Stalsburg met Grandma Stalsburg, they lived in the house, the old Stalsburg residence on Main Street in the front. Uncle Hi, Troger, and Bertha, who was Harold's sister, lived in the second house, and Grandma, Catherine O'Bannon, from Missouri, who married Harold Stalsburg, lived in the big old white house at the end of the road. And beyond that was the trucking company, which was a milk and horse cart company. Right?
Ivory.
Ivory. They toted ivory. But didn't he do milk too?
Yeah.
Milk carts, yeah.
Wait, so was that where Stalsburg Express was? Oh, okay.
That's how it started.
That's how it started.
That's how Stalsburg Express started.
Wow. And then when did it become the trucking company?
Well, it was. That was the early beginnings.
Oh,
and it was trucking ivory from New York, though, wasn't it?
No. Came up the river, and the town dock.
Yep.
They unloaded it there, and then pieced it out from there.
Yeah.
But was there any intrastate going into New York City at all for our Stalsburg Express?
Maybe the pianos.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Ivory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yep.
when they were done.
Yeah.
So taking them from the Pratt Reed factory
Right.
in Iverton
Yep.
to New York City.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. Interesting. And then, so what was
And
like?
the booze running was very,
Oh, what was that, Dad?
alcohol.
yeah.
Really? During Prohibition?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
See, this is good because I would have never known that.
Down where you were,
In Guilford?
help,
East Haven?
Bronx, so Brooklyn.
right in.
Madison, Westbrook.
No, down.
Oh, East Haven.
Not quite.
Okay. New Haven area. Okay. Taking it from there out to the country?
Yeah. They come in boats at night.
Yeah.
Rum runners.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I didn't know that either, Brittany.
Yeah.
So,
Wait, so what family members were involved?
Harold?
Yeah.
Senior.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gosh.
But
Now-
there was like a cabal.
Yeah, Harold.
Sorry.
Harold Senior met Catherine O'Bannon, and then there were three children. There was Robert Jr., there was Harold Johannes Jr., and there was Betty.
Yeah.
And Harold Johannes Jr. passed away. I'm not sure how or why.
Yeah, me either. I can't.
He had a heart condition, is what I remember.
Right, but
and
he passed away rather young.
when he was young, like I want to say 8,
Yeah.
or even younger.
Right. And that left Betty and Bob.
Yeah.
Got it. Do you guys remember your grandparents?
Oh, yes. Grandma Stalsburg showed us how to hook rugs because she used to cut all the, collect wool, old wool coats and wool dresses, and cut them into strips with a pair of picking shears. And she hooked one rug for Governor Lodge for the house in Hartford.
And one of her rugs is in the Historical Society in Deep River. We gave it to her. Yeah.
It was the last rug that Mom picked up that rug and had it framed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Whereas Aunt Betty took all of the rugs and used them, and they all wore out. And Mom preserved this one, and it's at the Historical Society. But beautiful, beautiful hooked rugs. And she taught Mom how to do it. And then Mom taught us how to do it. And then the other thing she taught me how to do, Grandma Stalsburg used to play canasta all the time. And she taught me how to play canasta.
Now, I have no memory.
Of them at all?
Not of,
A
no,
little
actually, of
bit.
either.
Yeah.
Do you?
Because I hang out with
Grandpa?
Grandpa
Or
Alexander.
Henry, Uncle High.
Uncle I.
Uncle High.
Yeah, he was like,
That's probably more, he would be more like what I would remember, but he was married to your grandfather's aunt, Bertha.
right.
Okay.
So Bertha and Henry, he was great uncle, but they lived right next door.
Yeah,
right next
And we spent a lot of time with them. Every Friday night, Uncle High would come over and have a scotch and soda and watch Hogan's Heroes.
Hogan's here.
Yep.
At your house, you would do that?
Yep. And I'd have to make the tuna fish sandwich with pimentos,
Yes,
right?
that
Olives. Ugh.
olive.
Tuna and olives, yes. Every
That was
Friday
Grandpa
night.
Stalsburg.
Yep.
Yeah.
Loved
Yep.
that.
But they also played a lot of cards. I was going to say Catherine O'Bannon is, she was one of the first women in legislation
That's right.
in the state of Connecticut.
Right.
So she was a mover and shaker. She was, you know,
And she was tiny.
Right.
Tiny, tiny,
I remember
petite little lady.
What do you think, like, gave her the confidence to do that, like, in that era? Like,
Yeah.
you know, because it was so unusual.
I think that going from
O'Bannon, just take it from there.
O'Bannon, yeah. I mean, she was feisty. She had a lot of history, which I never got to learn.
No, me either.
But she was, and she married a really hard-working Norwegian. And the two forces between the Irish and the Norwegian, I think the two of them just made great history.
Wow.
And then and Aunt Bertha was, she was
Stern.
Harold. She was Harold's sister.
Very
She was
stern.
a Stalsburg, but she was very, very fancy. She used to collect little Hummels.
Yep.
And she always had proper teacups and tea parties and played bridge with the women once a week at her house. Would set it up with all these fancy little dishes,
yeah,
cupcakes,
Out
and
on,
porch.
yeah.
and whereas Uncle High was just like an old school pharmacist that Patty and I used to walk to his pharmacy in Deep River after elementary school.
Yeah, see, I missed that.
And we would go and have an ice cream sundae, and he would make sure that they made them very small because we had to go home and eat our dinner.
Uncle High came from a big family, 8, 9, I don't know how many siblings. But he, both he and Aunt Bertha served in World War I. He was in the cavalry.
And she was in the waves.
No,
There's-
he was,
No? I have a picture of him, I think, with a horse. Maybe not cavalry.
No, that was Grandpa Bolster.
No?
No, Grandpa Bolster was a mounted policeman in Brooklyn.
it was the wagon that took the beaten people.
Oh,
He was running that.
yeah.
And what did Bertha do?
Medical corps, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, that I don't
Some
know.
support, so, you know.
She was very smart, but very proper.
Yeah, she was tough. She was tough. He was soft as all get out, and she was tough. But now, and Grandpa Stalsburg, your grandfather, he served in World War II.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was in
What do
Normandy.
you guys know or remember about that from what he told you? I know he didn't like talking about it a lot, but
Yeah, we made him know.
We did.
Yeah,
We did.
I remember out on the porch, Kitty did like what you're doing now. Kitty did with
we have one of those.
with Daddy about World War II, and he didn't like talking about it.
And we didn't.
He was in Normandy, and
He was in Belgium. He was in a he's like a supply, and he helped repair trucks. Rob can tell us what exactly unit he was in. So he landed in Normandy,
Mechanics.
probably mechanics. Yep, it was like 4 or 5 days after D-Day. One of the stories he tells me is that he was in Belgium, and they bivouacked in a woman's house And he woke up the next morning. They were on our floor, and they woke up the next morning, and he had been covered with a blanket, like she covered them. Yeah. And he also says he would never eat lamb because that's what he remembered.
Because all they had
was mutton.
And so whenever Mom made a leg of lamb or lamb chops or something,
He didn't like it.
the smell alone reminded him of the mutton that they were forced to eat in World War II.
Oh. And Dad, didn't you say like sometimes his buddies would come over?
Yeah.
And they would talk about the war?
Yeah, but and then we snuck in and listened, but it was all guys, and they were, sitting around the table, and we, snuck downstairs and listened. And
Right. Wow.
And after the war, Daddy Stalsburg came home, and it's when it was the first year that he and Mom were married that he spent a year at the Veterans Hospital in Newington.
Yep.
Because of
Liver disease.
liver failure. And we used to drive up every Sunday. We would get dressed up like we were going to church and to visit Daddy.
Yeah.
He was given 3 days to live.
And then never drank after that.
Never.
See, I was unaware of that. Well, I mean, I was.
Yeah.
But you were little.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't even around. No, were you even born? You weren't born. Nor was I.
Yeah, you were.
But you and Patty.
Patty.
And then, yeah.
Because they did.
Yep.
They got married in 1951
Right.
when I was 6 and Patty was 9.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had Buzzy in 1954,
Yeah.
Bobby in 1956, and Kitty in 1961.
61.
So did they meet after the war?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mom was she worked at a place called the Dog House, and she was a cook. So grandma's.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Telephone. We told you to shut it off.
Thought I did. But you got the
That's not
I know.
the rocket.
the rock.
Oh my gosh.
Stop.
He never follows rules. Never has.
He never has.
Exactly.
No, it's true. It is very characteristic.
We don't have to tell it. We can show it.
That's right.
in this
That's right.
moment.
Proof. Proof of the pudding.
But grandma came from a dirt poor Connecticut. I always call it a dirt poor Connecticut Yankee family. Her mother was an upstairs maid in East Adam, and her dad was a mechanic, and they had lots of kids. They had 7 children, one male, Uncle Dick, who's deceased, and Mom was the second born, and it was tough. It was really tough. And so a lot of her siblings, the girls, all seemed to have a quick way out of the house by getting pregnant and leaving the house as fast as they could. And, sometimes they weren't great relationships, and sometimes they were. And
One of my aunts was a year older than me.
Mostly.
Which one?
Yeah.
Paulette.
Yep.
Paulette. Yeah.
Great.
Patty was born in 1942. Paulette in 1943. And me, I'm 1945. So my mother and grandmother were having babies at the same time.
And grandma was essentially raising her mother's kids because her mother suffered dramatically from postpartum depression.
Yes. And she was she in a hospital too at one?
She had,
A couple of times. Yeah, she went to. But it was like the old days. The family was in and out, and it was a big old house on High Street,
Indy Brewer.
and
We ravished that place.
all the family, all the aunts and uncles, and
Yeah, would get dropped off there
would get dropped off.
so they could go to work.
Grandpa Alexander would be the cook and would sit at this big old table in the kitchen in Deep River on High Street, and Grandpa would make Yankee dinners, boiled potatoes. He'd go fishing and get fried eels, eat fried eels, and really old Yankee food.
Yeah. Where were they from? Grandpa Alexander and
From Haddam.
Oh, from Haddam. Okay.
Haddam.
Mopanassus, right?
But their nationalities were
Grandpa was definitely Irish, but he said, "I'm just a goddamn Yankee."
yeah.
Always. Grandpa, what nation? I'm a Yankee.
Yep.
And Grandma, Polish.
Yep.
and I think she had Polish and some German mixed in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Did he say that to mean like I'm a proud American, basically?
Grandpa? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's what that meant.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
And see, I don't remember High Street at all, except from their stories. I do remember when I was little. So now we're jumping years, right? In the early 1960s, Grandpa, Mom, my mother, your grandmother, and Bob Stalsburg, your grandfather, put a trailer in the back up by Stalsburg Express and moved her parents there. Her grandfather, her father there.
And that trailer started out as Grandma Stalsberg's house.
Right. Yeah.
I remember my dad.
Grandma Stalsberg lived in that trailer, and then they moved it farther up, and Grandpa Alexander lived there with the German
Cinnamon
Shepherd.
sugar toast.
Is that what he used to have? Yeah.
Now she gave it.
Wow.
Just one.
And Grandpa Alexander he had trouble walking, and he used to, like my neighbor here, David, who likes to drive his tractor around, he'd take his tractor from the house and drive all the way out to the end of the Stalsburg Pent Road and meet my school bus. Because he didn't want me walking all that way, which really wasn't all that way, but yeah.
We have pictures somewhere of Kitty
Yep.
riding on the tractor
Yep.
with Grandpa. And Grandpa also used to, when the German Shepherds couldn't walk anymore, Grandpa would hook up a little trailer behind the tractor and it had a ramp.
Yeah.
And the German Shepherd would ride in the back of the trailer.
Wow. He sounds like he was a really kind,
He was a
thoughtful
good
person.
cook, and he was
He drank a lot.
He did.
He was a big drinker.
He did.
he went for chemo. Henry and I used to drive him to Yale for chemo treatments.
What kind of cancer did he have? Do you know?
He had stomach cancer, and we'd have to stop at the package store and get a pint of Fleischmann and a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Henry would have to drink half of the Coke so he could mix the Fleischmann into the Coke.
Bring it to the chemo.
And then
And then
I had a little,
I had to do that too.
I had a Mustang convertible, and I had to sit on the stick shift in between Grandpa, and he said, "Why don't you just get in the back seat, Carol?" And she said, "Do you always have to be next to Henry?"
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So did your grandparents do a lot of like the child care for you guys, like when your parents were working?
Yeah, well, I had, until Mom married Grandpa Stalsburg, from birth until I was 6, we lived in High Street with Grandma Alexander and Grandpa Alexander and all the aunts and sisters. And then every weekend, every Friday night, Grandma and Grandpa Bolster, who lived up in Haddam, would pick us up and we'd spend the weekend at their house.
Yeah, that was before my time.
Yep.
Who
That
did childcare for you and Buzzy? Was it you guys?
What was her name from?
Call that?
No,
I loved her.
Raider.
So there was a woman that
There were
would.
several.
By that time, Mom was working in the office. So
Yeah.
Grandma Stalsburg, Grandpa had the trucking company. Grandma Stalsburg, as soon as they were married, she worked her way in to the business, and she ran the business with him. So it was an at-home, in-house business, and so the kids were.
And pretty much Patty and I were like the mother.
Yeah, they raised me for sure.
I mean, we
I can blame all my faults on.
I didn't give you any problems.
No. I mean, I was 16 years old when Kitty was born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we lived in the house. When Bobby got sick at night, he crawled in bed with me.
We were all in the big house.
Yeah.
yeah. The boys and.
But it was like Mom was always busy working, and I'd go to school and come home from school, and I'd start dinner and play with the kids.
Wow. And Patty too.
Patty too, and then she went. Patty stopped when she went away to college. Yeah, it was.
What was the dynamic like when you guys were all kids growing up in the house? Like, what were kind of like the different roles you all played?
They were babysitters for me.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were like the
we were like we were like full-time babysitters, and but we were also, we all had chores. we all had to clean the house, and not these kids.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say the boys. Too.
No, not Patty and Kitty, and they didn't have to do that kind of thing.
I had chores.
You had chores on your.
She always says I'm spoiled.
She had, Kitty wants a horse, and Kitty needs this, and Kitty needs that. And Patty and I used to take Mother's charge card to go to Lord and Taylor's and make her wear all this foo-foo
Oh,
clothes.
Lord.
I mean, we had
Brittany,
her,
it totally explains why I am like I am.
we had her in lace and pantaloons, and
She was like your little doll.
That's exactly
we
what
used
it
to
was.
curl her hair and put bows in her hair, and she was like our little baby doll.
Aw. And what were my dad and Buzzy like as kids?
Bobby was sickly. He always had stomach issues. He had like a nervous stomach, so he would throw up before a baseball game, and he would. But he was a devil. I mean, he was really a devil.
I don't remember.
That's why he lost a finger, because he was in the bicycle, because he told Buzzy to get off his bike, and Buzzy was spinning the wheel, and Bobby grabbed the bike and off. And then we picked up the finger and ran home and tried to save the finger.
And still to this day, it's the hook now.
Oh,
It's
the hook
known
now.
as.
So,
The
and
kids call it the hook now.
Your son loves that story.
He does.
But Buzzy always had imaginary friends,
Cooper? No.
Jarby and
Jarby.
Colby. And he was a fantastic reader. He loved and loved and loved to read. What were the westerns that he always read?
Louis L'Amour.
Louis L'Amour. I think he read every one of those books.
And read them and reread
Yeah.
them
So
and read
was
them.
he
He was an
smart? Got
introvert.
good grades.
No, because he didn't like to pay attention, and he only liked what he liked, and he loved to read. This one loved to read too, but in a different manner. Bobby was extremely quick wit, sense of humor, but always a little troublemaker.
Yeah.
And Buzzy was much more introverted. Buzzy would be happy just reading home, And I think I suspect he was a bit tortured in his, a little depressed or some mental health stuff maybe, and that's why drug and alcohol was a big thing for him.
It was his escape.
Yeah.
Yeah, of reality.
Yeah.
Did he have many friends, or was he more of a lone?
He did.
Oh, yeah.
There was a big, in those days, we're talking,
There was a crew.
there was a crew. There was a whole neighborhood crew that were all the same age, and they'd be on their bicycles, and they'd ride all over, and all the time.
South End gang.
Yep, South End gang. Yep.
Yeah, I asked my dad this before, like if you guys had many rules in your house, like if you had to be home by a certain time, or it was more like a free range kind of lifestyle.
Oh, no. We had so many rules. I mean, especially for Patty and I. Patty, not so much, because she didn't follow them.
Carol was the rule. Carol, I have a friend of mine who said Carol is the one that when you put the letter in the mailbox, you open it, you put the letter in, she's the one who opens it again to make sure it went down. Right? That's you.
Yeah. I mean, I was responsible for
Yeah.
the kids and for making dinner and setting the table and doing the dishes, and I was responsible for a lot of things.
You were a rule breaker, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
I was a rule breaker.
Bobby definitely was a rule breaker. Kitty was too. I missed all of her,
Yeah.
like
Formative
You
yeah,
got away with
her
everything.
formative
I did get
years
away with
because
a
I
lot.
was married.
Definitely
in
got
Japan.
away from
Yeah.
everything.
I remember they'd want to wrestle and all I'd have to do is cry and they'd be yelling at them. Stop, leave her alone. Yeah.
Was that just because you were like the baby?
I was the baby. I'm 5 years younger than he. And so, he played, the boys played rough.
They had a party and Kitty brought the horse inside in the dining room.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I remember that story.
And
When there was a band in
They
there,
used
too,
to have
There was a
parties all
band.
the time, and these guys would
And then unfortunately we took pictures. How stupid. Not with a phone, regular pictures.
Yeah, right.
So when the film was developed,
No fault.
but they would soak the watermelon full of
oh yeah.
vodka.
Yep.
And then after they were through, they would throw it down in the pond, and the ducks would be walking around drunk because they were eating the leftover watermelon.
Oh my gosh, I remember those ducks and those ponds.
And
That was such a nice property where you guys
Yeah,
lived. And
that
a
was
house.
mom and dad. They loved that property. Mom loved her gardening, despite her work, and they were also very, very, very engaged civically and politically. You know, they were old-time Republicans, the good kind of Republicans, if you will, and they, you know, they had very, very civic ideals.
Mother was in the American Legion. Mother was with the Seroptimus Club.
Ambulance, fire department.
They were just active.
Yep.
Elks
They were
Club.
never home. They were never home. That's the other thing.
we
They'd
were-
work all day long, come home, change their clothes, and go to meetings. Literally.
But they volunteered.
Yep.
For everything.
Yep.
And they'd have all the clam bakes in their yard.
I don't know how they did it. I think about that, and I'm like, Mom loved to entertain because
It's called slave labor.
She was a busy beaver.
She was.
Just very.
and she was bossy too.
She
really
couldn't
bossy.
sit down.
Yeah, right.
You know, she was just a very active lady. But
Going.
she never sat and read a book.
Never. And she got mad when we did. Like we'd have to hide. I remember hiding with Buzzy.
We were being lazy. If
We had to
sat and read a
read
book.
with the covers on our head at night, you know, and a flashlight.
Because she would have rather you do chores or something.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I
Stop
productive.
reading that book. Get outside, you know.
get to work.
Yep, get to work.
Get to work. Do something. Get to work.
Yep.
Did you guys go on any like family vacations that you remember? Any trips?
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah, we went on ski trips, and Grandma Stalsburg skied.
Wow.
Yep.
Funny.
That was at Jug End.
Yep. And then we used to go
Vermont.
on Elks conventions. And then we used to go to, when Buzzy, Bobby, and Kitty were really young, we would go to, it was some big hotel in Broughton. And it was some kind of convention. And we all went and ate and sat in a big fancy dining room that did all things like that, like a family.
Yeah.
Mom and Dad always went to the Elks conventions all over the country. And they went with their friends, and they loved, he would wear tuxes and she would wear ball gowns, and they would
They're
dance.
very active.
Dad loved music, didn't like to dance. She loved to dance.
And he loved her all dressed up.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Yep.
What was their relationship like, as far as you remember?
I think the best way to, Daddy was always very quiet. He let Mother rule. And Mother never bossed him around. But she was always in charge. And he only
Worked all the time.
he worked all the time.
All the time.
And she worked all the time.
She spent a lot of money. She spent a lot of money, clothes and food. They would have these New Year's Eve parties for 100 people, and she'd serve salmon and salmon mousse. And, oh my God. And she'd have family parties at the house all the time, like multiple holidays with 30 people, 2 full tables lined up with, you know, you had 5 pieces of silverware and you had 6 different plates. Oh my God, it was ridiculous. There was always water goblets. Because I set the table. That was my job.
It was like I remember my wedding. Daddy, who's Emily Post or the woman of etiquette?
Oh, yeah.
Daddy pulled the little pocketbook out of his pocket when Mother insisted that he had to stand in the reception line. And he said, Emily says right here, Father is optional. He puts the book back. This was in front of all the guests waiting to...
Oh my
They had
gosh,
a really-
Grandma probably didn't like that. when he did-
Well,
he-
but there was this humor. He had a very dry humor, and like he would always talk about mushroom poisoning. Apparently, somewhere along the line, there was a woman who a husband who poisoned his wife with mushrooms. So the joke was always, or the wife poisoned the husband. The joke was always, oh, is there mushrooms on the table? And then I remember we had a picture of a witch.
Yep.
It was hung in the kitchen, and under it he wrote in one of those tags, Grace.
punch it,
He
Grace.
put her name
It's
on
a
it.
Gracie. Gracie. But
And it lived there all our
all
lives.
our lives. It
All
was
our
in the
lives.
kitchen.
Yep.
But he didn't like have any resentment.
No,
went along
I-
with it.
Obviously,
Wow.
they had a very good sex life because they had 5 children and she had 3 miscarriages.
I don't know though, because I do remember her saying to me, I don't know why, but she said to me, it's really hard to not, like, they work together. So when there was anger or something at work,
she said it's really hard to leave that behind, in the bedroom.
She was very stubborn.
I didn't
She was very stubborn.
even think of that.
Of course you don't. You were immaculate at conception.
But it was interesting, Brittany, when you think about the fact that she bore five live children, was predeceased by 2 of them, and then had 3 miscarriages. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
And she was this tiny thing. Mom never weighed. Her average weight was about 105, right? At her height, she was maybe 120.
And Kitty was her last baby, and Kitty was 11 pounds.
I was a big oops. I was an oops, and she had a bad back after that.
Yep. She had a bad back.
Oh, you got to have this story. I think you might know it. But when I was born, because my birthday is July 31st, we went right from the hospital to the dad, Grandpa Stalsburg, and his sister Betty. They shared a cottage that was their parents down in Old Sabre, right on Great Hammock Beach.
Why you gotta tell?
Because there's a good story here. And so from the hospital, we went there, and that's where I spent my summer. And these guys, that's where we loved the summer there. But my brothers were not so happy about me, and they caught crabs and let them go in my bed.
The little green crabs.
In your crib?
No, I don't think it was.
No, it was
on the floor.
On the floor, but my mother woke up in the middle of the night and heard all the scratching because Bobby had
Green crabs. They're not.
Just gonna eat the little baby.
get
eat
rid
the
of that-
baby.
Get rid of that baby. But when you asked about vacations, that was our vacation.
That's it.
That cottage
Yeah.
was.
Would you guys go
kids-
there all summer?
Yeah. Well, half
Pretty
of it
much.
because we split it with his sister.
Saturdays.
So one year we'd have it from the beginning of the summer until July 31st. The next year we'd have it from August to the fall, and then they'd switch.
Rotate it.
Whoever had it at the end got it in the beginning the next year.
I could have bought that for $100 grand.
Yeah. It was
a good spot.
It was a great way. That's where I would.
It looks just the same.
Does it?
Yeah.
It was a lot of memories there for all
lot
of us.
of memories.
A lot of us.
Sand flat.
Yeah.
Did Grandma like that
Well,
cottage?
she
used to move the whole office.
Yeah.
Stalsburg
That's right.
Express.
Oh,
That's
right
right.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zebra.
She would have the phones hooked
Yeah.
up, and
Yep. That's right. I forgot that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Patty and I would be babysitting the kids out in the
Yeah.
water.
Wow, she
Of course-
does like remote.
Yeah, you were
work
getting
and-
tan.
Well,
Yeah,
Grandma
we gotta
never.
go.
Grandma didn't know how
coulda
to
drowned.
swim.
She didn't know how to swim.
Grandma never.
She tried. She tried multiple times.
Yeah, we tried. She almost drowned once in the pool.
She was pretty brave when you think about her. Like, she hated horses. She was definitely afraid of horses. But when I got into horses, she tried to take riding lessons.
Yeah.
And then she would go to my horse shows and bring food all the time because that was her thing, And same thing with swimming.
She
She'd
was.
try to swim. She really wanted to.
And that's why I think all of us were so athletic, because what she couldn't do, she saw to it that we could.
Well, she always considered herself a tomboy. She had a boyfriend who had horses. She also had a boyfriend who had motorcycles. So, she really, when she used to say, I'm a tomboy, I was a tomboy. And then it just pivoted, it just shifted.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't remember her as a tomboy.
No, but when she was younger, she was.
Yeah. Wow. What are some lessons that you all learned from your parents? Like anything that stays with you even today?
Well, I learned how to cook and how to create and be creative and make flower arrangements and garden. I learned so much from her when it came to decorating and setting a table and being a hostess, because that was so important to her. And learning how to dress properly and learning how to be a caretaker and be a mother. I mean, I only had one child after I was married for 10 years, but that's probably because I was always a mother,
Yeah.
but she taught us so much of normal, healthy skills.
What did you
Her
learn?
personality.
Work ethic.
Work ethic.
Definitely.
Big time from Daddy. And I think me too from
And
both
I
of them.
loved going up there
Yep.
and working.
Yep.
Even when I didn't have, I wasn't supposed to be up there. That's,
Yeah.
we used to sneak up there and help
Yep.
guys.
Yeah.
These kids, when they were little, would go up in the big trailer trucks and go for rides with Grandpa in the truck, and they loved it.
Was
But
it
see,
like was it
but see,
because
not
like
so
you got to spend time with your
Yeah.
dad?
Yeah, and
And the guys. It was the guys' place.
And we fought over it. You know, me and Buzzy.
Yeah.
My turn to go. Not my turn to go. You know, and go all day.
They instilled a lot of strong values just because that's who they were.
Yeah.
There was also some pretty negative stuff, I would say, too, Brittany. I don't think we should ignore that. I mean, there was, you know, this was a family that was, strict is not the right word, but there were a lot of expectations. There were a lot of expectations, I think.
Plenty.
And some dysfunction.
Yeah. There's always dysfunction
Well,
in families.
that was the other question is there anything you tried to do differently from your parents, even as a parent or just as a person?
I didn't whip you when you're,
Yes. Yeah, you didn't even really yell, Dad.
Yeah, I think that I tried to show more love.
Yeah.
Grandma Stalsburg had a very hard time giving a hug or being affectionate.
She didn't until she was late in life,
Yep, I was
probably
gonna say that.
70.
And then,
You know?
And then she was all over you.
And then she missed you, and she was telling you how much she missed you, and she was lonely. There was a selfish element to Mom. I think.
you can almost consider her cold, and when it came to affection.
But Grandpa, he was the big bear. I mean, he was so full of love.
Yep.
Unless you did something.
Unless you crossed him.
And I think that's where I became like a really, really huggy, kissy, affectionate person because of
Him.
because of Grandpa and because of the Bolsters. My grandma Bolster was like a hugger, and so was Grandma Alexander.
Yeah. Yeah, you are like that.
Yeah.
Kiddo. And you are too, Kitty, I think, to an extent.
But I was different because remember, they raised me. Mom was in the office and working or going out. She was there. I got the hairbrush, on my ass sometimes if I was bad. And I was a rebel. I was totally a rebel.
Yeah.
I can remember I came home from college one year and borrowed Sister Patty's car and had an accident, went out drinking, went off the road, brought it back to her and never told her. And she was like, did something happen in my car? Or Rob and I were out parking in the middle of the night somewhere and had to call your father to say, we're stuck. Can you help us? And he bailed us out. We were all...
I never got.
were you ever in jail? Did you ever get...
All right, tell that story, Dad.
My son was.
Which jail? So many of them.
Anything you want to share?
How about Florida?
Yeah.
In college. College.
Got thrown in a pokey couple times.
For what? What did you do?
Get, drunk and we used to walk around St. Augustine.
Call it mayhem.
Yeah.
I mean, we were not easy on our parents. Patty, our eldest, who's predeceased, she got abducted by gangsters, and Grandma and Grandpa, and then they didn't know if she was alive. They actually had a friend of theirs looking in a refuse pit, thinking they'd cut her up her body. I mean, it was bad.
She was a rebel.
Yeah. Did they ever know who that was or what the
she
story
knew.
was?
I don't know. Then she had to change
I think
her
she
name
was
and hide out.
in on it.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean change her name?
She was called Susie Taylor. She came home and she was no longer Patty Stalsburg. She was Susie Taylor, and we had to call her Susie.
How long
Then
did
she
that?
went to Europe, right?
Yeah. She went to she came to Japan.
Yep. And she had
an abortion because she had gotten pregnant with her doctor,
Yes.
Dudley, in New York. And then she went from there, she went to Hawaii. And Hawaii, she met Pascal, who was French. She tight. And from
she
there,
skied. She met Jean-Claude Keely.
and from there she went to, she had a refuge in the Alps. And she used to guide tours and treks up
Yeah.
used to eat raw fish. And
She was amazing, but tortured. She was a tortured soul. I mean, she ended up, when she died, she had no electricity, no water. She was a hoarder, and she had 20 cats living in her house. And she delivered papers. So,
What was she tortured about, do you think?
everything.
Everything.
Honestly, I think it was
Like in the same way Buzzy was.
She was unlucky in love, so
yeah.
Yeah. But I think she was, she was just she was very creative.
The drug.
And she was also very smart. I mean, she ran
I was the favorite.
Dr.
You were her favorite?
orthopedic
everybody's
clinic
favorite.
at Yale
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's when she was in her early 20s.
That's when,
You
right
know,
after
it might have been
college.
drugs. I think there was a pretty significant amount of drugs in her probably late 20s, early 30s that led her down some bad roads, you know?
And she went from Susie Taylor back to Patty.
Patricia.
It was Patricia.
It was Patricia Stalsburg.
Never ever call her Patty.
But she had a golden heart. Like when she died, I'll never forget. We had so many people reach out and say, your sister was amazing. She was my rural paper deliverer person, but she'd make sure my walk was shoveled. You know, when she was a bartender for years, and people loved her because she listened and she truly cared about people. And maybe that's where the torture was. She had a lot of love and she had a lot of care, and you can only absorb so much, I think, right? You know, she also was very anti-establishment, very anti-government. She was very suspicious. She was
Who was that doctor she was going?
Dudley Danoff.
He was flipped over her. You know?
Yep. He became a world-renowned urologist at Mount Sinai and then out in California.
Oh, really? Is he still alive?
Mm-hmm. Probably, yeah. So we won't show this video to him. And then, you know, Buzzy too. Buzzy was really, you know, he did live in his own world. He had tons of love. It took me a long time after Buzzy died to realize that Buzzy was, it was opioid toxicity that killed him, you know, and really it was an overdose. And it was before it became really a tragedy, you know, like it is, or as well known, because that's essentially.
He was very insecure, and I think a lot of depression.
Yeah.
What do you mean, Katie, like you realized that later? Like you didn't realize it was an overdose?
No, and you know, when he died, I wasn't even home. We were vacationing and I was at work, and they hadn't found him. He hadn't been around, and then I got a call at work that said we found him, and he'd been dead for a couple of days in his car, and it was heroin, wasn't it? It was
Yeah.
but you know, he had a bad
It was a
back and
hot shot.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I remember
and
I was at Stalsburg Express and the state trooper drove up. Yeah. I was, you know, working. I remember Carol ran over and said, "Is it Buzzy?" And like, I couldn't even as a kid, I couldn't even say it. You know, I was just like, I don't know, talk to grandma.
Yeah. And I think for me, Brittany, it you know, it was one thing if it was a simple overdose, but he was a product of opioids, right? Because he had been on drugs. He had asthma. He had a bad back. He was given prescription meds for a work injury. You know, yeah. I mean, he also had a predisposition. You know, he used to sniff gas as a young kid growing up, and you know, so anyhow. Oh God, that was a very depressing thing. Can we have a good one?
Yeah, no, I actually have a nice one. What do you want to? And this was like going to be my wrap-up question, and we could talk.
Really? Shucks.
What do you want to make sure your siblings know about how you feel about them now? Anything you want to
me
say
with these
to
two,
each other?
or
Yeah, anything you guys want to say to each other? That's
No, nothing comes to light.
I tell them all the time how much I love them.
Yeah.
And I show it all the time. So
We know we love each other. I don't know how to say it.
yeah,
or say it enough,
Well,
right?
Yeah.
but we're always hugging each other and always kissing each other. And
Do you guys see your parents in each other, or different parts of your parents?
definitely not my mother.
Yeah,
In any of us.
At any,
I don't
really,
think so.
nothing.
I don't even know that I see Daddy really.
no, I think we're all a product of ourselves.
That's really an interesting question, though.
I think we're more a product of ourselves, and I think these two learned a lot from me.
That's beautiful.
Because I was such a caring mother.
Oh God.
No. Anything else you guys think is important?
We
to
didn't talk
say?
about the railroad tracks.
Oh yeah, that's a
Why?
good story.
Why would that happen?
Let's wrap with that.
So the railroad tracks. What I remember from the railroad tracks, you tell it. You remember the railroad tracks? Yeah. That was the South End gang They were mad because the S-16 train was going through their territory, right? And it was, so you guys went
Well, I
down.
can't talk about it because Peter died.
Oh, so
You
the
can talk.
Oh, was
about
Peter
it.
part of that?
Oh,
Peter
yeah.
Fremont, the Fremonts, the
Peter and
Stalsbergs,
Teddy
the
and
Jabilas.
Jabalos.
Who else?
It's just me and Peter.
Oh,
Everybody else,
ran.
yeah,
Oh, so you and Peter were the ones who got caught.
Yeah.
But everybody was involved in,
a little bit.
right, putting crap on the railroad tracks to
What
stop
they
the
did-
train,
What
right?
they did was they had extra
ties, railroad ties.
railroad ties along the tracks because they were always fixing them. And these two put the railroad ties across the tracks.
Oh, that's what.
So
Oh, I
the-
thought it was
The
stone.
train hits the rails, it derailed, and it could have been tragic, but
I remember Grandma saved a newspaper clipping of that, like in my dad's file. She saved like that newspaper clipping.
they had to, Daddy Stalsburg, they had to go work at the railroad. And they had to lift ties and do hard labor work.
Yep.
That was rough.
He made
How
them
old were you,
work
Dad?
off their mistake.
14 maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
crazy.
All right. Love you guys.
Love you.
You too.
The end.
The end.
Good job, everyone.
Oh,
that was awesome. I learned like so much. I
Can I
feel
drink
like.
beer now?
Yes.
You can.